All right, let's get this thing rolling. Talk a little Ole Miss today on the show as Shawnee Sharp there puts up the schedule for Ole Miss. And look, we're going to do a bunch of SEC previews over the next couple weeks. This is going to be one of the easier schedules in the SEC that you are going to see. Ole Miss is very favorable for them. They're the only SEC team this year that does not play a non-conference Power 4 opponent, and that is because they were supposed to play Wake Forest, but the Demon Deacons paid them $750,000 not to play them this year. So favorable schedule. They get Georgia State off the bat. They also play Tulane at home. They get Washington State in the middle of the year. They get the Citadel as well. Should definitely win all four of those games. And then the SEC schedule, again, there are some good opponents. Florida, LSU, all those games, though, are going to be at home. South Carolina as well. The trickiest part of Ole Miss's schedule, without question, is that 2-week stretch back-to-back, Week 8 and Week 9, when they have to play at Georgia and at Oklahoma. Those two games are really going to determine probably Ole Miss makes the SEC championship game, maybe if they go over their win total, if they go to the college football playoff. If they can just win one of those games, they should be in a really good spot. So I do like Ole Miss's schedule. I think they're in a good spot here to do some good things for the upcoming season. And it's probably going to come down to that Week 8, Week 9 matchup with Georgia and Oklahoma. Looking at their numbers for the season, the win total is at 8.5. Again, probably 5 games that kind of scare you. So right off the bat, you're thinking Ole Miss gets the 7 wins. Can they get us 2 more? If they just win 2 of those 3 home games, they should go over the 8.5. If they can beat LSU, Florida, or they can beat South Carolina, they should go over that win total. And then, obviously, if they're able to steal one of those road games as well, Georgia, Oklahoma, they're going to be in a good spot. At Mississippi State to end the season, the Egg Bowl's in Starkville this year. They should win that game. Mississippi State probably going to be the worst team in the SEC yet again. But I do like over 8.5 wins for Ole Miss this season. To make the college football playoff, they're plus 210. And to win the SEC this year, they're 14-1. I would rather bet Ole Miss to win the SEC this year at 14-1. I think that's a much better number, again, because of the schedule. Georgia's probably the only team that they're going to play this year, maybe LSU, that they're going to be battling for a potential tiebreaker. They don't have to play Texas. They don't have to play Bama. They don't have to play A&M. Pretty much LSU and Georgia are kind of those only teams, and I think they're going to beat LSU because that game's in Oxford. But then that game against Georgia is probably going to determine whether or not they go to Atlanta for the SEC title game. I think it's worth it, though, to bet them at 14-1 to win the SEC, and also something that definitely could help out Ole Miss later on in the year if they do make it to the SEC championship game. Their second bye week this season is the second to last game of the season. So there might be an SEC team that's playing 5 straight games going into the SEC title game, 6 straight games going into the SEC title game, but Ole Miss having that late bye week, if they play the SEC championship game, they're going to be as well rested as a team could be, because obviously no team can have a bye the final week of the regular season. So another interesting wrinkle there in Ole Miss's schedule. Not only is it pretty favorable with the opponents that they have to play, but looking long-term and looking into the future, if they do end up making it to the SEC title game, I like the fact that they get that bye week, second of the last week of the season. And then finally, their quarterback, Austin Simmons. I'm a massive fan of his going into the season. We've talked about that on the show before. I think betting him to win the Heisman Trophy at 35-1 is a great look. We know Kiffin loves to run up the score and pad the stats in a lot of these games where they're big favorites. So when they go up against Georgia State, Citadel, Wazoo, all these games, Simmons could have close to 400 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns. And I know it was a small sample size, but what he did coming into the game against Georgia for that drive and leading them down the field and scoring a touchdown kind of gave me a little flash of Tua. So full off season to be the guy, still a young quarterback, surround him with great weapons in a Kiffin offense. I think Austin Simmons could put up some massive numbers. And with that schedule, it's not crazy to think Ole Miss could win double-digit games in the regular season, make it to the SEC title game. Think he's got a great shot. I'm big on Ole Miss this year. I like the over-win total, 14-1 to win the SEC. I think it's a good look. And Austin Simmons to win the Heisman Trophy as well. But let's talk to somebody who covers the team, knows Ole Miss a whole lot better than I do. We're talking with Michael Katz. Give him a follow on X at Michael L. Katz, who covers Ole Miss athletics for the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. Michael, great to have you on again this season, man. Let's talk about Ole Miss. Obviously, a disappointing season last year. Invest a ton in the transfer portal. A lot of money for that roster. Come up short of the college football playoff. This year, Ole Miss's team is bringing back the least amount of production of any team in the SEC. Georgia's the second to last. Ole Miss is dead last. So what are the expectations in Oxford this year? Is it still double-digit wins? Is it get to the SEC championship game? Or do you think this year is kind of a building block for maybe next year when hopefully a lot of these players return?
I think that under most circumstances, this would be a quote-unquote rebuilding year for a lot of programs. But I just think what Ole Miss typically does in the transfer portal and what they've built through recruiting and what we think they have at quarterback, I think that makes it a lot easier to maybe not skip a beat. I think the over-under is around 8.5, or whatever it is. I think, again, the schedule's favorable, and I know that was a talking point last year. It's a talking point this year. But as Lane Kiffin said, that didn't really help us last year because they, 3 games by 13 points, absolutely brutal way to have that season go down, because if statistically that was probably one of the top 5 teams in the country by pretty much every metric. But it didn't work out last year. That being said, the schedule is favorable. They get some of those tough road games last year: Florida, LSU, South Carolina. Those are all at home this year. And I think that just what Lane Kiffin has built in terms of just a culture and consistent winning. At media days, I was talking about this with someone, like, a bad year. They went 8-5 a couple of years ago, and people were like really upset about that. Like, that's pretty remarkable for where this program was before Lane got there, and just sort of the standard that this place is at now. 10-win seasons, 3 of the last 4. I said I think 8-4 is probably a pretty safe bet for 8 wins. But there's definitely I could see 9. You could talk me into 10. I think there's a lot of wild cards with this team in terms of how it all comes together. But they're really talented again. Are they a preseason top 5 team like they were last year? No. But I think they're going to surprise a lot of people.
So obviously Austin Simmons, we're going to talk about him in a second. A lot of people are excited to see what he does in a full season. But because they are bringing in so many new faces, Michael, who are some other names to maybe keep an eye on this season that you think can be impact players on either side of the ball?
When you look at that receiving room and what they lost last year, Trey Harris, if he doesn't get hurt, I think he probably I think there's a good chance he wins the Blitnikoff Award. And Jackson Dart probably ends up in New York, and Ole Miss is in the playoff. He played 6 full games and he had 1,000 yards, and he was unbelievable. Second round pick by the Los Angeles Chargers. Jordan Watkins has 900 yards, drafted in the 4th round by the 49ers. But they bring back Caden Lee, who had close to 900 yards last year. It was really a really nice developmental player for them these last couple of years. And then what they did in the portal, but bringing in Deshaun Strubling, a guy from Oklahoma State who had about 900 yards last year, and Harrison Wallace III from Penn State, who I know we talked about Tyler Warren on Penn State last year, but he was their leading wide receiver last year. So you've brought in guys who, they don't have experience at Ole Miss, but they have a lot of experience in major college football at big-time programs. So I think the receiving room is going to be sneaky good. Again, it's different than it's been. When you lose the sort of talent they lost last year, it's natural to think that there's going to be a big drop-off. But I think that room is going to be really, really good. And again, I know we're going to talk about Austin, but if Austin's going to have the season we think he can have, I think those receivers are going to play a really, really big part.
Were a lot of people surprised when Austin came into the game against Georgia last year and did what he did? There was obviously so much talk around Jackson Dart coming back for another year, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, ends up being a first-round pick to the New York Giants. So he got a lot of the headlines. But, Michael, I think a lot of us, coming into that spot in the rain, you're down 7-0, and he just goes right down the field like I was talking about it. I'm not saying he's going to be Tua, but, as a lefty, he was kind of showing me things that made me think of Tua. Did people know he was that good? When he came into the game, was it like, oh my God, look at what we have for next year? What kind of has been the recruiting story with him? And have people been excited about this upcoming year, knowing what they were going to have after Jackson Dart?
Yeah, so his story is pretty wild because he was originally a class of 2025 recruit. He graduated high school 2 years early. He was originally committed to Florida, flipped to Ole Miss, got here right before the 2023 season, redshirted in what should have been, I guess, his junior year of high school, which is kind of insane to think about. Obviously, a lot of talk about Dart, and rightfully so. He had an amazing year last year. But I think that we all watched Austin Simmons throw a football, and it just kind of looked different. Obviously, a lefty, the Tua thing always comes up, right?
Yeah.
But he played baseball too, and as a freshman reliever on the Ole Miss baseball team, he was throwing 94, 95. Like, that's a different type of arm that he's bringing to the table. He doesn't play baseball anymore, but that arm is really, really impressive. It's something that Caden Lee and other players talk about. Like, that's just a powerful arm. So we knew the physical talent was there. I think, though, like, the only times we'd ever really seen Austin was mop-up duty, right? When you're up by 30 or 40 against Wake and Georgia Southern and teams like that. I think I was most impressed with just the composure that he showed in that moment when he came in against Georgia. Because, if you remember that game, Jackson had just thrown an interception, I believe, and
Right.
Georgia had scored. He had gone down with an injury, and this was one of those things where, if you think about it, if Austin has a bad drive, maybe this thing spirals out of control, like in the first quarter. But Austin looked like a 4-year starting quarterback at an SEC program. He calmly let him down the field. Did not look phased at all by the moment, and I think over the last couple of months, we've really sort of gotten to see like that maturity from him. If you talk to him, you come away impressed because he does not seem like a guy who should have just finished his senior year of high school. I mean, he's just a mature guy. He's already finished his undergrad degree, which, again, insane to do in 2 years. But he's a really mature young man. The physical talent's there. I think that his poise and the way that he handles himself, I don't think that the moment's going to be too big for him. Are there going to be growing pains? Yeah, you're a first-year starting quarterback in the toughest conference in college football. But I think if anybody's ready for it, it's him.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens this year. What about the other side of the ball? When Kiffin first got there at Ole Miss, defense was a big issue. But ever since bringing in Pete Golding 3 years ago, things have really worked out. Pete's a great recruiter. They've built off the last 2 years. Even missing all those studs in their front seven, do you think they're going to be solid on defense again this season?
It's crazy. Lane's first year, they gave up like 40 points a game in that COVID year. And last year, they had the number 2 scoring defense, I believe, in the country at just over 14 points a game. That was a pretty remarkable defense. I know the offense always gets headlines with Lane Kiffin, but that defense did a lot of the lifting last year when maybe they were in a stalemate offensively. That being said, they lost a lot of really good players. Walter Nolan, Princely Monmiel, Jared Ivey, J.J. Pegues, Chris Paul, Trey Amos, all guys who played a huge part and are on, in NFL camps right now. That being said, the portal has been really good to Ole Miss on defense too. And like you mentioned, Pete Golding is a really good recruiter. I think now that people have seen that you can have a really, really good defense at Ole Miss, I think that's helped a lot. Because now it's like, yeah, everybody wants to go play wide receiver at Ole Miss, but now you can be a defensive lineman at Ole Miss and be a first-round pick. So I think that's been really big. They've got some really nice players in the portal, maybe not the headliners like they had last year. But Deshaun Womack was a top 50 recruit when he went to LSU, edge rusher. Princely Umanmielen's little brother, Prince Will Umanmielen, was a big recruit. They got him. And they've built up the defensive front through high school recruiting too. I think that the secondary, it's a question mark, and it was a question mark a little bit last year outside of Trey Amos. It was a little bit hit or miss. But Pete Golding defenses are at their best when the front seven is really aggressive and really good. And I think that this team, this group, while obviously younger and maybe not as heralded, has a chance to be really, really good. Are they going to be number 2 in scoring defense again and have 52, whatever sacks it was, and 100-something tackles for loss? I don't know. but I think this group is really talented, and it's. I don't think the drop off is going to be as stark as maybe some of my fear it might.
We got about 1 minute left, Michael. I'll just ask you this. If you could bet anything with Ole Miss this season, if you could go over 8.5 wins, if you could bet them to make the college football playoff, if you could bet them to win the SEC, or even go bold and think this team is good enough to win the national title, if you were to bet them in any of those markets, or even I'll throw Simmons to win the Heisman Trophy in there, kind of whatever you want, futures bet, what do you think would be the way to go in about 60 seconds with Ole Miss this year?
Yeah, as you know, I'm not a betting man these days, but I think that win total. I think there's I've been talking myself into 9-3, 10-2 lately, just because I think they're going to be better than people think. They only play 3 games outside of the state of Mississippi this year, and those are Kentucky, which we know what happened last year, but that should be a manageable game. Georgia, we know that's going to be brutal, and Oklahoma. Again, 2 of those 3 seem fairly manageable. They've been really good at home for the most part under Lane. I think that over on 8.5 wins is again not a betting man, but 9-3 is not sounding so crazy.
Yeah, I'm with you. Should be an interesting season. Can't wait to watch Austin Simmons this year. Michael Katz, kind enough to join us. Give him a follow on X at Michael L. Katz. Covers Ole Miss athletics for the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. Michael, really appreciate it, man. Talk to you again soon. Enjoy the season.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Yep, absolutely.